Nobody ever forgot the day Emily Carter faced down the black giant. The summer air in Nevada carried heat, dust, and a kind of tension that stuck to your skin. The county horse auction was chaos. Cattlemen hollering, boots thudding on boards, trucks rumbling by with trailers, and the scent of hay and diesel swirling everywhere. Emily Carter stood small and quiet at her mother's side, pressed into the shadow of the old wooden fence. She had always felt invisible at these events, but now, after her father's accident, she felt even smaller, like a piece missing from her life she'd never get back. Her mother, Sarah, tried to keep her distracted, pointing out the gentle mares and playful colts in the pens. But it was no use. All Emily could see was the empty space where her father should have stood, his laugh ringing over the noise, his hand warm on her shoulder. Instead, Sarah's fingers were tense and cold, and she spoke in hushed, practical words. Suddenly, a scream split the air. The crowd surged away from the far pen. People were shouting. Someone yelled, "Get back! He's wild!" Others cursed, scrambling onto the fence for a better look, or maybe to get away. That was when Emily saw him, the black stallion. He was massive, nearly 17 hands high, so dark he looked blue in the harsh sun, with scars slashing across his chest and flank. His eyes flashed white, wild and rolling. His nostrils flared like a dragon's, and the battered lead rope snapped between his enormous hooves. The auctioneer tried to keep his voice steady. "We've got Cole up next, folks. Come on, he just needs a firm hand." The horse reared, crashing against the metal gate. A man, a wrangler, lunged in, whip raised, but the stallion spun with a force that sent him stumbling. The crowd gasped. Cole, everyone seemed to know the name, lashed out, hooves striking the ground, eyes wild with panic. Emily's heart pounded. She heard snippets around her. "That's the killer! He nearly took off Earl's arm last month. Should just put him down." The voices faded. Emily couldn't move, couldn't blink. The stallion's terror was so raw it felt like her own, like the nights she'd woken sobbing for her dad and nobody could reach her. In that moment, something strange and electric tugged inside her. She didn't feel afraid. The bidding was a disaster. The auctioneer started at 1,000, dropped to 500, then 2. Silence. Not one rancher, not one cowboy wanted the beast. 100 then! Come on, folks, he's just misunderstood. A cruel laugh rang out. That thing's not fit for glue, much less saddle. Emily took a step forward. Sarah grabbed her arm. "Emily, no, stay back." But the stallion was trembling, sweat foaming on his neck, eyes darting for escape. And Emily saw, in a flash, something she couldn't explain. A memory of her father, gentle hands cupping her own as they soothed a panicked foal. The words he always said echoed in her head. "Sometimes the ones who fight the hardest are just the ones who hurt the most." She pulled free of her mother's grasp. The world slowed down. Emily ducked under the fence rail before anyone could stop her. The crowd's roar faded, replaced by a ringing silence broken only by Cole's ragged breaths and the thump of her heart. Someone shouted, "Hey, get that kid out of there!" Sarah screamed, but Emily kept walking step by step. Cole froze. His ears went flat. He looked ready to charge. Emily didn't run. She held out her hand, palm up, the way her father taught her. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here." The stallion's eyes locked on hers. Every muscle in his body was trembling, ready to explode. But he didn't move. Emily's sneakers crunched on the straw. She could see every scar, every patch of missing hair, the terror in his eyes. She took one more step, another. She was close enough now to feel his hot breath, see the quiver in his muzzle. She reached out and touched him. The moment her fingers brushed his nose, the stallion shuddered, but instead of lunging or biting, he went still, silent. Emily felt his heartbeat through her palm, wild and rapid, then slowing, matching her own. His massive head dropped a few inches. He let out a long, shuddering sigh. The crowd was silent. For a second, nobody breathed. Then a woman gasped. "He's letting her!" Sarah burst through the gate, eyes wide with terror. But Emily didn't let go. The stallion leaned into her hand, almost gently, like he was remembering something soft from another life. His wildness melted away, just for that moment. The auctioneer, stunned, found his voice. "Well, I'll be sold to the little lady and her mom for $100. Laughter, relief, and disbelief rippled through the crowd. Someone started clapping. Emily looked up at her mom. Sarah's eyes were full of fear, shock, maybe something like hope. She nodded, slow, as if waking from a dream. Emily stroked the stallion's neck, whispering, "You're safe now. I promise." And so, in a swirl of dust and whispered awe, the day that should have ended in disaster instead became a miracle. A quiet girl and a haunted horse, each lost and hurting, finding something impossible in each other. No one at the auction that day ever forgot the black giant, or the little girl who calmed him with nothing but courage and a gentle hand. Sarah Carter had always prided herself on being practical, the kind of woman who faced problems head-on. But as she drove the rattling pickup home from the auction, she kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see disaster barreling down on them. Emily sat beside her, quiet and bright-eyed, hands folded in her lap. In the trailer behind, the massive black stallion, Cole, shifted and stomped, the old wood creaking in protest. The road wound through Nevada's desert hills, pink twilight giving way to bruised clouds gathering on the horizon. Every now and then, thunder grumbled in the distance, promising a storm. Sarah's nerves were already frayed from the day's chaos, and each rumble made her grip the wheel tighter. "Emily," she said, as calmly as she could manage, "are you sure about this?" Emily didn't answer at first. She stared out the window, watching the sky darken. "He needs us, Mom," she said, her voice soft but certain. Sarah wanted to argue, about money, about safety, about what the neighbors would say. But the memory of her daughter stepping forward in front of the whole town, gentle as rain, kept replaying in her mind. There'd been something in that moment she hadn't seen in Emily for months. A spark, a sense of purpose. So instead, she sighed, nodding as they pulled up to the little ranch at the edge of town. They backed the trailer up to the old red barn, lights flickering on in the gloom. The storm was nearly on top of them now, wind whipping up dust, and the air tinged with electricity. Sarah opened the gate, heart pounding, ready for a fight. But Emily moved first, opening the trailer and calling, "Come on, Cole, you're home now." The stallion stepped out, tense and wide-eyed. The barn was small but dry and safe, filled with the familiar scents of hay and leather and horses. Emily led him inside, careful and patient, while Sarah watched, barely daring to breathe. She bedded him down with fresh straw and a bucket of water, double-checking the latch on his stall 3 times before she and Emily finally went inside. Rain began to pelt the tin roof as they ate dinner, canned soup and toast, the only thing Sarah could manage with her mind racing. Emily ate quietly, sneaking glances out the window every few minutes, like she could sense the storm gathering in more ways than one. It was just after midnight when the trouble started. A sharp, frantic whinny shattered the silence. Emily sat bolt upright in bed. The wind howled, rattling the windows. Lightning cracked, illuminating the yard in blue-white flashes. Sarah, heart thudding, scrambled for her boots. But Emily was already out the door, nightgown billowing as she ran through the rain. The barn was chaos. Cole reared in his stall, eyes wild, kicking at the walls. Thunder shook the rafters. For a moment, Sarah saw only danger, her daughter inches from those deadly hooves. But Emily moved slow, slipping inside the stall, her voice barely a whisper above the storm. "It's okay. It's okay. I'm here." Sarah started forward. "Emily!" But her daughter raised a hand, calm and sure. Cole's ears flicked. He was shaking, sweat streaking his coat, but he didn't lash out. Instead, he pressed himself against the far wall, nostrils flaring, whole body trembling. Emily knelt in the straw, folding herself small, her back against the stall door. She began to talk, quiet, steady words, not pleading or commanding, just sharing. She told Cole about her father, about how he used to hum while brushing the horses, about how he always said storms passed quicker when you had a friend nearby. The rain hammered the roof. Thunder boomed, and still Emily talked, telling stories of the old days on the ranch, of learning to ride, of the emptiness that had settled in her chest since her father was gone. "I miss him so much. I know you're scared too. But I'm not leaving you, Cole. I promise." Minutes crawled by. Sarah stood frozen at the door, unsure whether to intervene or just pray. The barn filled with the storm's fury, but somehow, within the stall, a different quiet settled, a hush of understanding. Cole lowered his head, sides heaving. Emily reached out, palm up. The stallion sniffed her hand, then nudged it, tentative. Another rumble shook the sky, but this time Cole didn't flinch. He took a step closer, then another, until he was standing over Emily, enormous and gentle. And then, something impossible happened. The stallion folded his long legs and sank into the straw, lowering his head into Emily's lap. He let out a deep, shuddering breath and closed his eyes. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth. Tears stung her eyes, shock mixing with awe, and a hope she'd thought she'd lost. She watched as Emily stroked Cole's mane, whispering soft, soothing words. The storm raged on, but inside the barn, girl and horse found peace. They stayed like that for hours, until the thunder faded and the rain softened to a gentle lullaby. When morning came, Sarah found them still together, Emily curled beside Cole, the first smile she'd worn in months blooming on her face. The miracle at the auction had stunned the town, but the real miracle, Sarah realized, was this. In the dark, in the middle of the storm, two wounded souls had chosen to trust each other, and from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The morning after the storm, Emily woke up to the warmth of sunlight slanting through the barn windows and the steady rise and fall of Cole's breath beside her. It felt unreal. For a moment, she didn't remember the auction, or the storm, or the ache that had lived inside her since her father died. All she felt was peace, a quiet she hadn't known in months. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching her daughter stroke the stallion's scarred neck. She still wasn't sure if what she'd seen last night was a miracle or just a fluke of exhaustion and luck. But one thing was clear. Something between Emily and that black horse had changed. Maybe, she thought, it was worth believing in, at least for now. They spent the morning together in the barn. Emily brushed Cole with careful hands, talking to him in a gentle stream, while Sarah mucked the stalls and checked the feed. Cole's muscles twitched and tensed, but he stayed calm, watching Emily with big, dark eyes that seemed softer now. Later, the familiar rumble of Dr. Blake's old pickup sounded in the driveway. The local vet was a friend, one of the few people in town Sarah still trusted. He was tall and thin, with a quick laugh and a way of moving that set animals at ease. He carried his kit into the barn, nodding at Emily and giving Cole a wide berth. "Well, you sure know how to pick them, Sarah," Dr. Blake said, eyeing Cole's size and battle-scarred body. "This one's a legend already. Half the county's talking about what your girl did yesterday." Sarah shrugged, but Emily just smiled, her hand never leaving Cole's mane. Dr. Blake set to work, moving slow, letting Cole sniff his hands before he checked the horse's legs, eyes, and teeth. He listened to Emily's quiet explanations, the auction, the storm, how Cole had rested with her all night. When Dr. Blake gently lifted Cole's left front hoof, he paused, frowning. "Well now, that's something you don't see every day." He pointed to the underside of the hoof. There, faded but unmistakable, was a scar shaped like a horseshoe, almost perfect, except for a small nick at the top. Sarah knelt for a closer look. Emily stared, something in her memory stirring, a flicker of another time, another place. Dr. Blake looked up at them, voice thoughtful. "You know, I've only ever seen one horse with a scar like that. Years back when your dad rescued that wild Mustang off the mountain. Remember, Emily? You were just a little thing." Emily's mind raced. She remembered the photo. Her dad, smiling wide, standing beside a black colt with a wild mane and a bright, hopeful eye. She remembered helping feed him apples, brushing out the tangles in his coat. That horse had a tiny, odd scar on his hoof, just like this one. Her heart pounded. "Mom, do you still have Dad's old photo album? The one with the rescue pictures?" Sarah hesitated. She hadn't opened that box since the funeral. For months it had been too painful to even think about. But now, something in Emily's eyes, a spark of the girl she used to be, pushed her to act. She nodded. "I think it's in the attic. Come on." They left Cole with Dr. Blake and hurried inside. Dust danced in the sunlight as they climbed the old wooden stairs. The attic was filled with boxes and memories. Old boots, Christmas decorations, faded school papers. Sarah knelt by a battered trunk and pulled out a thick, leather-bound album. Emily flipped through the pages with trembling hands. There it was, a photo of her father, younger and leaner, holding the lead rope of a colt that looked so much like Cole it hurt to look at. Black as midnight, wild-eyed, a white star just barely visible under his mane. Emily squinted at the photo. She could see the scar on his hoof, the same crooked horseshoe clear as day. Sarah sat beside her, silent. She picked up another picture, this one of Emily as a little girl, arms wrapped tight around the colt's neck, both of them laughing in the sunlight. Emily's voice trembled. "It's him, isn't it? It's really him." Sarah wiped her eyes. "It looks like it, honey. I think Cole's the same horse your daddy rescued all those years ago." Downstairs, thunder rumbled again. A summer storm passing through. But nothing like last night. Emily held the photo, heart swelling with a mixture of grief, joy, and something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She hurried back to the barn, photo clutched tight. Cole raised his head as she entered, ears pricked. Emily held the picture up, kneeling so he could see. "You remember him, don't you? My dad. He saved you, and now you're back with us." Cole nickered softly, nosing the photo, then nudging Emily's shoulder. It felt like a sign, a circle closing, a lost piece of her family coming home. Dr. Blake watched, smiling softly. "Some things are just meant to be, Em." That afternoon, Emily carried the photo everywhere, showing Sarah, Dr. Blake, even the mailman who came by. She felt lighter than she had in months. The pain of losing her dad was still there, but it was softer now, the edges blunted by the miracle of Cole's return. Sarah noticed the difference too. Emily laughed more, her shoulders less tense, her eyes brighter. She spent every spare moment with Cole, brushing, feeding, talking, just being. Sarah caught herself smiling more often, and for the first time in ages, she allowed herself to imagine that things might get better. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the ranch, Emily sat by Cole's stall, watching the sky turn gold and purple. She knew there would still be hard days. People in town would have opinions. Cole's scars might never fully heal. But for the first time since her father's death, Emily felt like she belonged somewhere again. She wasn't just the quiet girl with the empty eyes. She was the girl who'd brought Cole home, who'd found hope in the most unexpected place. And as Cole rested his big head on her shoulder, Emily whispered, "We're going to be okay, I promise." That night, as she drifted off to sleep with the photo under her pillow, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever, a sense of purpose, and the certainty that her story and Cole's were just beginning. Sunrise on the Carter Ranch had always been a quiet affair, but after Cole came home, everything felt more alive. Like each morning carried the promise of something new. Emily rose before the alarm, slipping out of bed and tugging on muddy boots, her hair wild from sleep. In the barn, Cole waited for her, ears pricked at the sound of her footsteps. She could feel the difference in him already. Less jumpy, more trusting, the wildness in his eyes softening with each passing day. Their mornings settled into a gentle rhythm. Emily brushed Cole's glossy black coat, humming the old lullabies her dad used to sing. She whispered secrets into his ear, sharing her hopes and worries the way other kids might talk to a best friend. With each brushstroke, each soft word, the scars on Cole's body seemed less important than the trust that grew between them. After chores, Emily hurried through her cereal so she could ride a few minutes before school. She'd never ridden a horse as powerful as Cole. His muscles rippled under her, and at first every step felt like a leap of faith. But with time she learned the subtleties of his movements, the way he liked to move slow at first, testing the world, before stretching into a careful, loping trot along the fence line. Sometimes she would let the reins fall slack and just breathe in the dawn, the cool air filling her lungs, Cole's mane whipping against her cheek. Sarah, always practical, kept a watchful eye from the kitchen window. The teacher in her wanted to research every safety rule, to double-check every latch and bolt. But the mother in her couldn't help but notice the change in Emily. Her daughter was more focused, more alive. There were fewer arguments at breakfast, fewer nights spent staring at the wall, lost in old grief. Sarah found herself pausing at the door just to listen to the sound of Emily laughing with Cole, something she hadn't heard in far too long. After school, Emily hurried home to the ranch. She'd toss her backpack by the door, trade her sneakers for boots, and be out the back door before Sarah could even call hello. Cole greeted her with a low nicker, his eyes bright, the haunted look replaced with a glimmer of curiosity. Sometimes they practiced simple training exercises Dr. Blake had recommended. Leading, stopping, gentle backing up. Other times, Emily just sat beside Cole in the paddock, reading out loud or sketching his profile in her battered notebook. Bit by bit, Cole learned to trust again. He let Emily lift his feet, check his hooves, and even brush his tangled tail. The first time Emily looped a halter over his head, Sarah held her breath, but Cole stood steady, ears twitching as Emily murmured reassurances. There were setbacks. One afternoon, a clap of thunder sent Cole skittering sideways, nearly knocking Emily over. She landed hard in the mud, breathless and scraped. For a heartbeat, Cole froze, panic flaring in his eyes. But instead of bolting, he lowered his head and nudged Emily's arm, as if apologizing. She grinned through the pain. "It's okay, buddy. We'll try again tomorrow." Sarah watched this quiet partnership bloom, and it softened something inside her. She found herself lingering by the paddock after dinner, talking with Emily about horse care, or sharing stories from her own childhood, riding the neighbor's old mare. Some nights, when Emily and Cole moved together in the golden light, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since her husband's accident. A glimpse of a family healing, piece by piece. But the world beyond the ranch was not so easily convinced. At the grocery store, Sarah overheard the whispers. "That's the Carter girl, with the black horse from the auction." At the post office, a neighbor warned her quietly, "Those animals never really lose their wildness. I hope you know what you're doing, Sarah." Even at school, Emily heard kids murmur about Cole's scars, his reputation, the danger everyone assumed he carried. Emily tried not to let it bother her, but some days the weight of other people's fear felt heavier than a sack of feed. She poured herself into her routine: morning rides, after-school chores, patient training. Dr. Blake visited often, offering advice and encouragement. He taught Emily how to read Cole's moods, how to reward his calm, and how to step back when he needed space. One Saturday, Dr. Blake brought his own daughter, a shy girl named Lucy. Emily invited her to meet Cole, and to her delight, Cole allowed Lucy to stroke his muzzle. It was a small victory, but for Emily, it felt monumental. She started inviting other kids from school to the ranch. Not many at first, just the ones who seemed curious but afraid. Bit by bit, the whispers faded, replaced by cautious smiles and quiet wonder as more people saw how gentle Cole could be. Even Sarah's heart began to soften. She caught herself defending Cole at the diner, snapping at anyone who repeated rumors about the killer horse. At home, she marveled at Emily's growing confidence. The way her daughter took charge of Cole's care, how her laughter returned, how the sadness seemed to lift, replaced by hope. Still, an undercurrent of tension lingered. Rumors swirled in town. The sheriff stopped by one afternoon, all politeness but with a warning in his eyes. "Keep a close watch on that horse, Sarah. Folks are nervous. One bad incident, and there'll be trouble." Sarah nodded, hiding her worry from Emily. That night, she sat on the porch, watching her daughter brush Cole under the stars. She knew the peace they'd found was fragile, but she also knew this: the bond between Emily and Cole was real, and every day it grew stronger, healing wounds that once seemed impossible to mend. Inside the quiet, steadfast routine, a new kind of family was forming, one built not just on love, but on the courage to trust again, even in the face of doubt. Whispers in a small town were like tumbleweeds, rolling, multiplying, impossible to ignore. As the days slipped into weeks, Emily's bond with Cole grew, but so did the unease in town. There was something about the sight of the black stallion, so big, so scarred, so different, that unsettled people. It didn't matter that Emily could ride him bareback in the pasture, or that Cole let Lucy braid ribbons into his mane. Most folks saw only what they wanted to see: a dangerous horse with a dark past, now in the hands of an 11-year-old girl. It started with a look. Mrs. Cranston, Emily's fifth-grade teacher, pausing just a little too long on Emily's scraped elbows and mud-streaked boots. Then it was a question from Mr. Parks, the grocer, eyeing Emily and Sarah as they loaded up on oats. "You sure it's safe, Sarah? That's a lot of horse for a little girl." Each time, Sarah offered the same answer, tight but polite. "Emily's careful. We're both learning. He's not what people say." But stories grew teeth. Someone remembered the time Cole had broken through a corral and sent 3 men running for their lives. Someone else insisted he'd bitten a ranch hand, though nobody could say exactly when. Emily heard kids at recess whispering behind her back, "That's the killer horse, the one from the auction. They should have put him down." It stung, but she kept her head high, determined to show the truth. The real trouble began one Friday afternoon. Emily came home from school to find her mother sitting on the porch, her lips pressed tight. On the table beside her sat a yellow envelope, official-looking, the kind that made Emily's stomach twist. "What is it?" she asked, heart pounding. Sarah handed her the letter, her hands shaking just a little. "It's from the sheriff's office," she said quietly. "Someone filed a complaint. They say Cole is a public danger. The county's going to send someone out. If anything happens, if Cole so much as breaks a fence, they'll take him away." Emily felt her world tilt. She gripped the letter so hard her knuckles turned white. "But he hasn't done anything wrong." Sarah's eyes were soft but sad. "It doesn't matter, honey. Not to them. They remember what he was, not what he is." For the first time since the stormy night in the barn, fear crept back into Emily's chest. She sat with Cole in the paddock, tracing the white star on his forehead, fighting back tears. "They don't know you," she whispered. "They don't know how gentle you are, how scared you get when someone yells. It's not fair." That evening, Dr. Blake drove out to the ranch. He read the letter, shaking his head. "It's the old story. Folks fear what they don't understand. But I'll talk to the sheriff, see if I can buy you some time. You just keep doing what you're doing, Emily. Prove them wrong." Still, the threat hung over the ranch like a storm cloud. Sarah grew more cautious, double-locking the barn at night, keeping Cole in the paddock where she could see him. Emily trained harder than ever, practicing every command, teaching Cole to stand still even when a car backfired or the neighbor's dog barked. She took careful notes in a battered journal, marking every small victory. Cole let Lucy ride again today, didn't spook at the mailman, nickered when he saw me after school. But fear changed things. Sarah hesitated to invite people over. Emily found herself snapping at classmates who asked about Cole, her patience thinning under the weight of constant judgment. One afternoon, a group of boys dared each other to sneak up to the fence and shout. Cole startled, but didn't bolt. Emily shooed them away, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. It felt like every day was a test, and every mistake, real or imagined, would cost them everything. Saturday brought a fresh wave of worry. The sheriff's cruiser pulled into the driveway, dust swirling in its wake. Sheriff Tom, a broad-shouldered man with a weathered face, stepped out, hat in hand. He greeted Sarah, but his eyes kept drifting to Cole, who stood quietly in the paddock, ears flicking nervously. "I just need to take a look around," Tom said, his voice even but firm. "Got to check the fences, see that you're doing all you can?" I know this isn't easy, Sarah, but my job's to keep the town safe. Emily watched from the barn, heart in her throat. She wanted to shout that Cole wasn't a monster, that he was just scared like everyone else, but her voice caught in her chest. Tom walked the fence line, inspected the barn, and watched as Emily led Cole through their paces. The horse behaved perfectly, gentle, obedient, responding to every cue. Still, Tom's face stayed serious. "I'll file my report," he said finally. "You folks are doing things right, but you understand the situation. If there's an incident, any incident, I'll have to act." Sarah thanked him, but Emily saw the worry in her mother's eyes. After Tom left, the ranch felt smaller, every sound sharper, every shadow longer. Emily buried her face in Cole's neck, whispering, "I won't let them take you. I promise." But promises felt small against the tide of fear and rumor. Emily knew it would take more than words to save Cole. It would take courage and patience and the willingness to stand up again and again for the truth. She was ready, but she was also scared. As dusk fell and the first stars pricked the sky, Emily sat on the porch with Sarah. They didn't talk much, just watched the wind stir the grass, Cole's silhouette steady against the fading light. Somewhere in town, another whisper was starting. But on the ranch, Emily made a vow. She would fight for Cole, no matter how many people doubted, no matter how many warnings came. Because she knew, sometimes the bravest thing you could do was love something the world had already given up on. The Nevada summer wore on, thick with heat, and tension at the Carter Ranch seemed to hum in the air like a power line about to snap. Emily did her best to hide her worry, pouring herself into Cole's training and care. But even Cole felt the difference. He flinched at sudden noises and spent more time pacing the fence line, head high, nostrils flaring, as if he sensed the unease settling over their home. The 4th of July crept closer, bringing with it an electricity that Emily both dreaded and anticipated. Every year, the town put on a fireworks display in the park at the edge of the desert. It was supposed to be a celebration, a time for hot dogs, lemonade, laughter, and light. But this year, all Emily could think about was the official letter from the county, the sheriff's stern warning, and Cole's deep, instinctive fear of loud noises. Sarah did her best to prepare. She read online articles, called Dr. Blake for advice, and reinforced the barn as best she could, lining Cole's stall with fresh straw and hanging up an old quilt to muffle the sound. "He'll be fine, Emily," Sarah said, brushing the hair from her daughter's forehead. "We'll stay with him the whole time. He's safe here." But Emily wasn't convinced. She could see the worry in her mother's eyes, the tension in her voice. All she could do was sit with Cole as the sun set, singing softly, trying to keep her own fear at bay. The first fireworks sounded like gunshots, sharp, echoing cracks that rolled across the desert and bounced off the barn's tin roof. Cole jerked upright, eyes wide and white-rimmed, sweat breaking out on his flanks. Emily knelt beside him, whispering, "It's okay, buddy. It's just noise. I'm right here." But outside, the world exploded in bursts of color and sound. Each boom shook the walls. Each whine and sizzle sent Cole pacing in frantic circles. Emily tried to soothe him, but nothing worked. He pawed the ground, head tossing, tail lashing. Sarah's voice rose above the noise. "Emily, get back!" Then it happened. One last, deafening bang, closer and louder than the rest, sent Cole crashing against the stall door. The old latch snapped. With a wild scream, Cole burst free, hooves pounding on the barn floor, eyes wild with panic. Emily stumbled backward, dust and straw swirling in his wake. Sarah grabbed her, pulling her out of the barn just as Cole crashed through the half-open door and disappeared into the night. For a moment, the world went still, the echo of Cole's panic lingering like smoke. Then Emily was running, heart hammering, Sarah's shouts lost in the roar of the fireworks. "Cole! Cole! Come back!" Sarah caught her by the arm, dragging her back to the porch. "We can't chase him in the dark," she said, voice shaking. "We'll get help. We'll find him, I promise." They called Dr. Blake, who arrived within minutes, flashlight in hand. Together, the three of them fanned out, searching the pastures, the creek, the dirt road leading into the hills. Emily's voice grew hoarse from calling, her legs heavy as she stumbled through sagebrush and cactus. The sky was a riot of color above, but on the ground, everything was shadows and silence. "Emily, over here." Dr. Blake's voice cut through the night. He'd found hoofprints in the dust, leading toward the woods at the edge of the property, a tangled stretch of pines and juniper, seldom visited since Emily's father died. Sarah hesitated. "We should wait until morning." But Emily shook her head. "He's scared, Mom. What if he's hurt?" So they pressed on, flashlights bobbing, following the trail through the undergrowth. Emily's mind raced with memories, her father teaching her to read tracks, showing her where deer had passed, where a coyote had dug for water. She moved by instinct, guided by a mix of hope and fear. The trail led them deeper, away from the lights of the town, until the world shrank to the narrow beam of their flashlights and the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. They called for Cole, hearts pounding, the night alive with the sound of insects and distant, fading booms. Then, suddenly, the trail ended at a clearing, a place Emily recognized from years ago. An old campsite ringed with stones, half buried under weeds and fallen branches. Her father's favorite spot. The fire pit was filled with ash, and a battered tin coffee pot sat rusted and forgotten in the grass. And standing in the center of the clearing, sides heaving, was Cole. He was trembling, sweat streaking his coat, his eyes wild and haunted. But he hadn't run far. He stood exactly where Emily's father used to camp on long rescue trips, as if drawn by memory or something deeper. Emily approached slowly, voice gentle. "Hey, Cole, it's okay. You found your way home, didn't you?" Cole pricked his ears, his body still quivering with fear, but he didn't bolt. Instead, he took a shaky step forward, nostrils flaring as he caught Emily's scent. Sarah and Dr. Blake hung back, letting Emily move at her own pace. She held out her hand, palm up, the way her father had taught her, and waited. Cole stood frozen for a moment, then let out a long, shuddering breath. Inch by inch, he stepped closer, until Emily could touch his muzzle, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You're safe now. I promise." She wrapped her arms around Cole's neck, tears spilling down her cheeks, relief and exhaustion mixing with something deeper, a sense of connection that went beyond words or even memories. Sarah finally stepped forward, resting a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Let's get him home, honey." Together, under the pale light of the waning fireworks, the three of them led Cole out of the woods, back toward the ranch. The danger was far from over. The sheriff and the neighbors would have more to say now. But in that moment, Emily knew she'd do anything to protect Cole, no matter what the world threw at them. As dawn crept over the desert, Emily looked back once, seeing the old campsite fade into the shadows. She felt her father's presence, strong and steady, guiding her home. And for the first time since Cole had run, she allowed herself a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could outrun the past and build something new together. The runaway night left Emily and her mother shaken, but as the sun rose over the Carter ranch, they led Cole back through the quiet dawn, clinging to the fragile peace they'd reclaimed. For a while it seemed like the worst was behind them. Cole was safe. Emily kept close to him every day, careful not to leave him alone in the barn, never letting the darkness or the echoes of fireworks catch them off guard again. But word spread fast in a small town. Before long, the neighbors heard about Cole's escape, about how the dangerous black horse had bolted through the night, how Emily and Sarah had chased him into the woods. Rumors twisted the truth, growing darker and wilder with every retelling. By the time Monday rolled around, Emily heard the whispers everywhere, at school, at the store, even at church. "He could have hurt someone," a woman muttered to her friend at the bakery counter. "Should have never let them keep him in the first place," an old rancher grumbled by the gas pump. "They need to put that animal down before someone gets killed." It felt like the whole world was turning against them. Emily's heart ached, not just for herself, but for Cole, who was gentler now than he'd ever been, who had trusted her to bring him home even when he'd been scared out of his mind. She knew what fear looked like, what it felt like to lose control. She refused to let Cole pay for being afraid. The final blow came 3 days later, just as Emily was leading Cole around the paddock. A white county truck rumbled up the driveway, kicking up dust. Sheriff Tom stepped out, followed by a stern-faced woman with a clipboard and a group of neighbors trailing behind, their faces tight with worry and something close to anger. Sarah came out to meet them, arms folded, her jaw set. "Is there a problem, Sheriff?" Tom nodded, removing his hat. "We got another complaint, Sarah. This time it's official. Town council wants Cole removed from your property. Says he's too much of a risk after the runaway." The woman with the clipboard stepped forward. "We're here to collect the horse, ma'am, for everyone's safety." Emily's world tilted. She stared at Cole, his ears flicking nervously, sensing the tension, and felt something inside her snap. All the fear and frustration, the quiet strength she'd held onto since the auction, it surged forward, hot and unstoppable. "No!" Emily cried, planting herself in front of Cole, her voice echoing across the yard. "You can't take him. He didn't hurt anyone. He was scared, that's all. He always comes back. He's not dangerous. He's family." The crowd murmured, surprised by the force in Emily's voice. The sheriff tried to calm her. "Emily, we have rules." She cut him off, eyes bright with tears and determination. "Please, just let me explain. Give us one more chance. You all know my dad. He rescued horses. He believed every animal deserved a second chance. Cole's the same horse my dad saved years ago. He came back to us because he needed us, and I need him too. You saw what happened at the auction, Sheriff Tom. He's not a monster. He just needs someone to believe in him." For a moment, nobody spoke. The wind tugged at Emily's hair, at Cole's mane. The crowd stared, some skeptical, some moved, all of them waiting for someone else to make the first move. Dr. Blake stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I can vouch for what Emily's saying. I've examined Cole myself. He's got scars, sure, and he's had a hard past, but he's shown nothing but gentleness since he's been here. I've seen that horse let kids braid his mane. I've seen him sleep with his head in Emily's lap. That's not the behavior of a killer." Still, the councilwoman hesitated. Rules are rules, Doctor. We can't risk another incident. Emily's breath caught. She looked around, desperate. Then Lucy stepped out of the crowd, voice trembling but clear. He's not scary. I was afraid of him at first, but Emily showed me how to trust him. He's really sweet. He's just different, inspired. A few other children, kids who had visited the ranch or seen Emily riding Cole, chimed in. He lets us pet him. He never bites, said one boy. He's just scared of loud noises like me, whispered a shy girl, clutching her mother's hand. The crowd began to soften. Sarah moved to Emily's side, putting an arm around her shoulders. Please, she said quietly. Let us prove Cole isn't a danger. He's part of our family, and he's part of this community too. If you take him away now, you're not just punishing him. You're punishing my daughter for loving something that everyone else was too afraid to save. The silence stretched, heavy and uncertain. Then Sheriff Tom sighed, looking at the hopeful faces, the stubborn courage in Emily's eyes. All right, I'll talk to the council. We can try a compromise, a trial period. Cole stays, but if there's even a single problem, we revisit the decision. Understand? Relief washed over Emily, so strong her knees nearly buckled. She nodded fiercely, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, everyone. I promise I won't let you down. Cole won't let you down. The councilwoman made a note on her clipboard, not quite smiling, but not scowling either. The crowd began to disperse, some still skeptical, others more curious than afraid. As the trucks drove away, Sarah hugged Emily tight. Cole lowered his head, bumping her shoulder with his nose, as if sharing in her relief. Dr. Blake gave Emily a thumbs up, his eyes shining. Emily knew things would still be hard. There would be people who doubted, rules to follow, and plenty of watchful eyes. But for the first time, she felt the tide beginning to turn, not just for her and Cole, but for everyone who'd ever been judged by a scar or a rumor or a single mistake. They were still standing, together. The days following the council's decision passed in a blur of nervous energy and hope. The Carter Ranch seemed to breathe easier, though the tension still lingered around the edges like a distant thundercloud. Emily clung to the second chance Sheriff Tom had given them, determined to prove that Cole belonged, not just in her life, but in the heart of their community. Every morning, Emily rose early and went through Cole's routine as if their future depended on it. Which, in a way, it did. She brushed his glossy coat, checked the fences, walked him carefully along the edge of the property, always keeping an eye out for anything that could spook him. She didn't mind the extra caution. If anything, it made her feel more responsible, like she and Cole were on a mission together. Sarah also changed. Where once she watched anxiously from the window, now she came out to the barn, helping Emily with chores, and even learning a few tricks for calming a nervous horse. Dr. Blake visited more often, offering advice and encouragement, helping Emily draw up a plan to help Cole grow more comfortable with loud noises and unfamiliar people. But the real turning point came on a golden Saturday morning, when Emily had an idea. If we're supposed to show everyone Cole isn't dangerous, why don't we invite them over? She said, excitement lighting her eyes. We could let them meet him, see for themselves he's not scary. Maybe they'll change their minds. Sarah hesitated, memories of angry faces and harsh words still fresh in her mind. But she could see the hope in Emily's face, the courage it took to reach out instead of hiding away. With a deep breath, she agreed. All right, Em. let's do it. They spent the next few days preparing, tidying the barn, hanging handmade invitations on doors at the market and church, asking Dr. Blake to help spread the word. Open Ranch Day, the flyers read. Come meet Cole. See what a little trust can do. On the morning of the event, Emily was nervous. She brushed Cole's mane until it shone, then braided in a blue ribbon Lucy had given her for luck. Sarah baked cookies, Lucy and her dad arrived early to set up lemonade, and Emily rehearsed what she'd say to the visitors. She kept glancing at the driveway, waiting for people to arrive, her stomach fluttering. At first, only a few families showed up, cautious, uncertain, keeping their distance from Cole's paddock. Emily greeted each person with a smile, explaining Cole's story, showing how he'd learned to trust again, how he'd let her touch his muzzle and brush his tail. Dr. Blake demonstrated simple training exercises, explaining why Cole's behavior was different now, how animals and people both could heal with patience and care. Then more people came. Neighbors who'd whispered behind their hands, kids from Emily's class, even Mrs. Cranston, who'd once warned Sarah to keep Cole away from school. Some hung back, but curiosity pulled them closer, especially when they saw Lucy stroking Cole's neck or Emily leading him quietly around the pen. One by one, Emily invited the children to the fence. "If you want to, you can pet him," she said, her voice gentle. "He's big, but he's just as nervous as you are. Just move slow and talk to him." A few kids crept forward, hands trembling, but Cole stood calm and steady, his eyes soft. He nickered when the littlest girl giggled, lowering his head for her to pat his nose. Soon, laughter and chatter filled the air. Emily demonstrated how Cole would follow her around the paddock without a lead, stopping and starting on her command. She let the braver kids take turns brushing his mane. Even some adults dared to step forward, surprised at how gentle the giant black stallion could be. Sarah watched it all with tears in her eyes, part pride, part relief. The ranch, once isolated by fear and rumor, buzzed with new energy. The people who had come to judge now lingered, chatting over lemonade, asking Emily about Cole's favorite treats or sharing old stories about horses they'd known. The real breakthrough came when Sheriff Tom himself showed up, hat in hand, his face serious but curious. He watched as Emily led Cole through a series of commands, the horse obedient and calm. After a while, Tom gave a small nod. "He looks good, Emily. You've done a fine job." Emily felt a swell of pride. She met Tom's gaze, her voice clear. "He's not just my horse, Sheriff. He's part of our family now. And he wants to be part of the town, too." The sheriff smiled, surprising everyone. "Well, I reckon we could use a little more courage like that around here." After the last guests left, the ranch felt lighter, filled with laughter and hope. Word of the open ranch day spread through town, and soon people stopped by just to see Cole, bringing apples or asking if their kids could meet him. Slowly, the old stories were replaced by new ones, of the black stallion who loved children, of the quiet girl who had given him a second chance. The whispers changed, too. Neighbors who had once called Cole a monster now praised Emily's bravery, offering help with the fences or inviting her to ride with them after school. The ranch became a haven for anyone who felt misunderstood, a place where trust and kindness mattered more than scars or reputation. Emily knew there would always be challenges. Some people would never change their minds. But as she stood in the paddock, Cole's warm breath on her cheek and her mother laughing with new friends, she realized the impossible had happened. She and Cole had not only found their place, they'd changed the heart of the community itself. Together they'd proved that second chances could be contagious, and that courage, once shared, could heal more than just a wounded horse. Emily had always thought healing was something that just happened with time, like a scrape on your knee or a bruise from falling off your bike. She believed that if you waited long enough, the pain would fade and you'd go back to being the person you were before. But standing on stage at the school assembly, with Cole grazing quietly behind the fence outside, she realized that healing was much more complicated and much more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The school gym was packed. Parents, teachers, classmates, even Sheriff Tom and members of the town council had come to listen. When Emily's principal announced she would be speaking about her experience with Cole, the whole room hushed with curiosity. Emily glanced out the window, caught a glimpse of Cole's black mane in the sunlight, and felt a surge of courage. She took a breath, stepped up to the microphone, and began. "At first I thought I was saving Cole," she said, her voice wavering just a little. "He was the horse nobody wanted. Everyone was afraid of him, and I guess deep down, I was afraid too. Not of him, but of everything I'd lost. My dad, my sense of belonging, even hope itself." She paused, glancing at the faces in the crowd. She saw Sarah, eyes shining with pride and tears. Dr. Blake giving her a thumbs up. Lucy clutching her hands in her lap, mouthing, "You've got this." But Cole showed me that healing isn't about forgetting the past or pretending scars don't exist. Emily continued. Healing means looking at the parts of ourselves that hurt the most and finding a way to love them anyway. It means having the courage to trust again, even after everything has gone wrong. A hush fell over the gym. Emily remembered the first night Cole slept in her lap, the storm raging outside, their fear making them more alike than she'd ever guessed. She remembered the runaway night, chasing Cole into the woods, feeling her father's presence as they found their way back. She remembered the faces at the ranch, friends and strangers who had come, curious and cautious, and left with their hearts changed just a little. I learned that judging someone, or something, by their scars or by old stories isn't fair. Sometimes the things that scare us the most are just misunderstood. Sometimes the people who need the most kindness are the ones who act the toughest. She looked at Mrs. Cranston, who smiled and nodded. Emily smiled back. Cole had to learn how to trust people again, just like I had to learn how to trust myself after my dad died. We both had to be patient with each other and with ourselves. There were days when it seemed like nothing would get better, when people said things that hurt or didn't believe in us. But we kept trying. We showed up, even when it was hard. Emily's hands shook a little as she gripped the microphone, but she pressed on, her voice growing stronger with every word. Real healing is slow. It's messy. It's sometimes 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But it's also full of tiny miracles. Like the first time Cole let me braid his mane, or when he nuzzled a little girl who was afraid of horses, or when the sheriff changed his mind and gave us another chance. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Some parents wiped their eyes. Even Sheriff Tom looked away, blinking hard. "Animals and people are more alike than we think," Emily said, smiling through her tears. "We all need someone to believe in us. We all need second chances. We all need kindness, especially when we're hurting." She took a breath, looking at her mother. "I thought losing my dad meant I would always be alone. But Cole helped me find hope again. He helped me find my voice, and he showed me that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be scared. What matters is that you don't give up." The principal stepped up. placing a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "Thank you, Emily," she said. "That was beautiful." The gym erupted in applause. But for Emily, the real moment of healing came afterward, outside by the fence. Kids and parents gathered around Cole, asking questions, petting his neck, feeding him apple slices. Even those who had once feared him now stood in awe. Their judgment softened, their curiosity awakened. Sarah hugged Emily tight. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Your dad would be too." Dr. Blake smiled, his eyes warm. "You didn't just heal Cole, Emily. You healed this whole town, bit by bit." Lucy grinned. "You helped me be brave, too." As the crowd dispersed and the sun began to set, Emily leaned against Cole's shoulder, breathing in the scent of warm hay and grass. She knew there would always be scars, on Cole, on herself, on the hearts of everyone who'd ever lost something precious. But she also knew that scars were proof of survival, of lessons learned, of love given and received. Healing, she realized, wasn't about returning to what you were before. It was about moving forward, together. It was about choosing hope over fear, compassion over judgment. It was about finding family in unexpected places and letting your heart stay open, even after it's been broken. As the ranch faded into quiet and Cole dozed peacefully at her side, Emily closed her eyes and smiled. She was home. Months passed, and with each sunrise, the Carter Ranch changed a little more. It wasn't just the extra repairs to the old barn or the sound of more laughter echoing across the fields. It was the feeling, a gentle peace that had taken root and begun to blossom, slow and steady, in every corner of their lives. Emily woke early every morning, long before her alarm, drawn by the promise of a new day. Each time she stepped into the paddock, Cole would nicker softly and trot to meet her, his once haunted eyes shining with trust. Gone were the days of tension and suspicion. Now, the black giant stood proud and relaxed, nudging Emily's shoulder with affection or curling his neck to invite a scratch behind the ears. Sarah watched these scenes unfold with a quiet, deep gratitude. She'd feared, at first, that bringing Cole home would tear open old wounds, making their grief harder to bear. Instead, the opposite had happened. Emily's courage had breathed new life into the ranch and into Sarah herself. Mother and daughter found comfort not just in each other, but in the steady, healing presence of Cole, the living legacy of the man they still missed, but no longer mourned in silence. The ranch's transformation didn't go unnoticed by the town, either. At first, neighbors came only out of curiosity, peering over the fence or stopping by on errands. But after the school assembly, word spread. The Carter Ranch was a place of second chances. People began bringing their own animals, an aging golden retriever with anxiety, a rescued tabby too skittish for most homes, a mule with a limp. Emily and Sarah never turned anyone away. They worked together, drawing on what they'd learned from Cole. Patience, gentleness, the value of small, consistent acts of care. Before long, the ranch was alive with new faces. Kids from Emily's school visited after class to help brush horses, walk dogs, or simply sit in the shade and listen to stories. Even some of the most skeptical townsfolk changed their minds. Mr. Parks, the grocer, brought over his granddaughter, who had always been afraid of animals. She left the ranch grinning, a carrot in one hand and Cole's mane in the other. One crisp autumn morning, Sarah paused by the fence and watched Emily lead a group of children through their paces with Cole. The sun gilded the grass, and laughter floated through the air. Sarah felt her heart swell. Pride, yes, but also a kind of relief. The old pain that once gripped her chest had loosened. She found herself humming as she worked, sometimes even singing the songs her late husband used to play on his guitar. The house was brighter, filled with warmth and the gentle chaos of a place where life was celebrated every day. Cole, too, had changed. His scars remained, long, pale lines on his coat, reminders of a harder past, but he carried them now with grace. He was a legend, not just in Emily's eyes, but throughout the community. Children drew pictures of him for school projects. Dr. Blake gave lectures about trauma and healing, using Cole as a living example. "You can't erase the past," he'd say, "but you can choose what you build on top of it." One chilly evening, the town gathered for a harvest festival at the Carter Ranch. Lanterns glowed in the trees, and music drifted from a small band near the barn. Emily stood beside Cole in the paddock, smiling as neighbors, friends, and strangers approached to offer apples, ask questions, or simply marvel at how far he'd come. Lucy read a poem about courage. Sheriff Tom told a story about the bravest girl and the gentlest horse in all of Nevada. Sarah served pie, her laughter ringing out above the music. As the sun set and the stars came out, Emily stood at the fence watching the crowd. She felt the weight of her father's old jacket around her shoulders, the comfort of his memory like a steady hand on her back. For the first time, she understood what legacy truly meant. It wasn't just something you inherited. It was something you chose to live day after day in the way you loved and cared and forgave. She turned to Cole, pressing her face into his neck. "We did it," she whispered. "You and me. We gave each other a new start." Cole snorted gently, nuzzling her cheek. Sarah joined them, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "Your dad would be so proud, Emily," she said softly. "Not just of what you did for Cole, but of how you've changed this place. You turned our sorrow into something beautiful." Tears pricked Emily's eyes, but she let them fall. She wasn't crying from sadness anymore, but from joy, a full-hearted gratitude for everything they'd been through. Every risk, every setback, every act of kindness that brought them here. As the festival wound down, families said their goodbyes, promising to visit again soon. The ranch glowed in the lantern light, alive with hope and the quiet knowledge that love, once given, has a way of multiplying. In the months and years that followed, the Carter Ranch became known as a haven for the misunderstood, a place where old wounds could heal and new stories could begin. Sarah and Emily worked side by side, honoring the memory of a beloved husband and father, not with grief, but with every new life they welcomed, every frightened animal they calmed, every neighbor they helped. Cole remained at the center of it all, a symbol of what was possible when you refused to give up, when you chose compassion over judgment. His legend outgrew the scars of his past. To everyone who met him, Cole was a reminder that even the most broken hearts could find their way home. At the edge of the paddock, Emily watched the stars blink into view. She felt the pulse of the land, the steady rhythm of hooves and laughter and hope. She knew, deep down, that one child's courage to love the unloved had healed not just one horse or one family, but an entire community. As the night settled softly around her, Emily whispered a promise to the sky, a vow to keep loving, keep believing, and to never, ever stop fighting for second chances. Because in the end, she'd learned that redemption was possible for anyone, if only you dared to believe and care.